Good morning and welcome to Sanctuary Gaming Club Online, your family-friendly gaming community. We are going to jump into Ravnica Allegiance Sealed today. Gave it a shot yesterday, but unfortunately the audio quality wasn't where it needed to be, so I had to delete the previous video. Did pretty good. Drafted had a sealed Azorius deck that went 6-3. So probably could have went a little further if it wasn't for some misclicks that I had there at the end. But hoping to show you guys some of the same mechanics that unfortunately were lost yesterday. But maybe if I get a chance, we'll be able to load the old video up onto YouTube with the audio quality. Hoping to get outside my comfort zone a little bit and see if we can get something besides Azorius today. But we'll take whatever the packs give us. So with that, let's go ahead and dump in our gems and see what we pull here. Okay. Honestly, not a lot great. So it'll be our rares aren't necessarily pulling this anywhere. We got this Glass of the Guild pack yesterday. Very interesting looking card. Multicolored creatures. Excuse me. Very important difference. Multicolored creatures you control get +1. Be interesting to see maybe if we had a deck with a lot of afterlife effects. This might slot in very well there, since all of the afterlife tokens that are made are black and white, and having a board full of 2/2 flyers seems like a great idea. Plaza of Harmony reads, when Plaza of Harmony enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. It doesn't enter into play tapped, which is nice. We can tap it to add 1 colorless mana, or we can tap it to add 1 mana of any type that a gate you control would produce. This card definitely opens up some multicolor possibilities. One of the things that I noticed in the last set is it was very railroaded towards the specific guilds. It's hard to draft outside of Dimir or outside of Boros or outside of Selesnya and still have a good deck. From what I've seen online early with some of the other streamers, this doesn't quite look to be the same way, but the format is still pretty new. And so we'll see if a good multicolor, maybe even 4 or 5 color gate deck becomes possible in this set, or if it still winds up just being heavily focused on the guilds. Tome of the Guild pack, whenever you cast a multicolored spell, draw a card, add 1 mana of any color. For 5 mana, this isn't a great effect necessarily. Normally when you want to ramp is earlier in the game, not late in the game. When I get to 5 or 6 mana in Sealed or in Limited, I really want something that's going to dramatically affect the board. And with it costing 5 mana, you can't even easily play this and then play another multicolored card from your hand to immediately get the card draw effect. So this one is probably not going to make our deck in any situation. We'll see though. Smothering Tithe, an enchantment, 4 mana, says whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color. This card is going to be wonderful in Commander, give white players an easy source of ramp. This card obviously gets better in multiplayer and better in formats where card draw is pretty rampant. Unfortunately, in Sealed, this card's not going to do much for us either. Again, waiting until 4 mana to ramp isn't necessarily great. And then the question in Sealed is always, well, what are you ramping into? What are you going to do with all of this extra mana? And there's usually not enough outlets to put that mana in. Maybe you have a big bomb. Maybe you have a couple creatures that have some mana sinks, some abilities that you can reuse mana over and over to put it into. But again, usually rather just have a strong creature. So not doing so great with our rares so far. Here is one that is pretty interesting. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. So it's important to know, just because your opponent is tapping to attack, this is not going to activate that card, but anytime they have to tap to use an ability, then you get to draw a card. So this becomes great. For 5 mana though, we can tap target creature without flying. This tends to be a powerful effect when it is cheaper. 5 mana is quite a lot of mana. And there's also the restriction of not being able to tap flyers, and there's some powerful flyers here in the set. Orzhov has plenty. Rakdos, I think of Rakdos himself. The card is a 6/6 flying with trample, but still being able to pay 5 mana and tap down our opponent's biggest threat every turn can be nice in the late game, and every time we'll do it, we'll get to draw a card. So this can be the kind of card that really pushes us through the late game and help us come out on top over our opponent. So maybe if blue is open, we might use this card. Not necessarily, it's not a strong enough card to make me say, oh, I definitely want to play blue, but I will definitely consider it if we wind up having some other good blue cards. And then we see Cindervines here. Another enchantment. So one thing to note is all of our rares are basically do nothing rares. They don't do anything when they enter the board, which is kind of disappointing. So our our sealed here is definitely going to be made off our strong commons and uncommons, because our rares aren't doing much for us. Cindervines says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervines deals 1 damage to that player, and then for 1 mana we can sacrifice Cindervines, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cindervine deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So in sealed and in other limited formats in draft, the formats revolve around your creatures. You don't necessarily get a lot of spell slinging decks, so this card is very rarely going to be useful. It's a card that maybe I could sideboard in some matchups, but since we're playing best of 1, this is not probably not going to make our deck. So not really happy with any of our rares. Let's go in, and first thing I like to do, especially in Ravnica sealed, is to sort by our gold cards. Our gold cards are our cards that are 2 colors, and see what we have available here. So Senate Courier, you'll see some of these don't look like they're 2-color cards, but what these are cards that have 1 color in their casting cost and a different color in their ability. So Senate Courier is 3 mana, and then it has flying. It's a 1/4. For 2 mana, you can give Senate Courier Vigilance, which rarely matters, getting in for 1 damage. But flying 1/4 for 3 is fine stat, so I wouldn't mind playing that. Rakdos Trumpeter, for 2 mana, 1/3 Menace. So Menace means he has to be blocked by 2 or more creatures. So again, it chips in for 1 damage. Rakdos actually wants to take advantage of any life, any damage that it can deal, even if it's just small little bits here and there, because so many of their cards use the ability Spectacle. What Spectacle is it will give your creature an additional effect or a reduced casting cost if you've done damage to your opponent this turn. Maybe we'll get to show off some Spectacle cards later. So Rakdos Trumpeter, good enabler, definitely not a bomb by any means. Gravelhide Goblin, that's an intense looking goblin. Usually they're nice and small. This guy looks like a monk of some sort, or a shaman, I guess. But 2 mana, 2/1, not bad on the stats. And for 3 and a green, he can get +2/+2 till the end of the turn. Good filler creature. Steeple Creeper, or Creepy Steve, as I have been affectionately calling him. Frog Snake, 2 and a green, 4/2, but for 3 and a blue, he gets flying. This is a pretty nice little card. A little bit higher stats than you would expect for 3 mana. A lot of 3 mana cards are 3/2s, so having that extra power allows him to trade up, and being able to tap 4 mana and throw him in over the top for 4 damage is pretty nice. So it's a good green common there. Azorius Locket, you can tap it for blue or white, or pay 4 and draw 2 cards. These are actually really good cards to have at least one of in your deck, especially if you don't have any other card draw. Plenty of the games that I played yesterday, just being able to sack my Locket and draw 2 cards was exactly what I need to just push through that last little bit, to get that last little bit of card advantage over my opponent and wind up winning the games. So definitely wouldn't mind having a Locket in whatever colors we wound up in. Get into some of our uncommons here. The Sphinx of New Prov. Flying and Vigilance with a 4/3, so good stats, good body, good evergreen abilities. And then spells your opponents cast that target Sphinx of New Prov cost 2 more to cast. So he'll be a little more difficult to get rid of. So like in our Sphinx here, Final Payment, have 2 of those. As an additional cost to cast this spell, pay 5 life, so that's a hefty chunk of life, especially here in Sealed, where we only start with 20 life. But we can also sacrifice a creature or an enchantment, and then we can destroy target creature. This is a great card in Orzhov, where a lot of your creatures you can sacrifice and take advantage of their afterlife ability and get 2 flyers on the board. 1 or 2 or 3, however many their afterlife is, but you can get some flyers on the board. So you don't feel as bad casting away your own creatures. So this is pretty strong removal. I'm going to go ahead and throw these down here and see what it pulls us into. Another great Orzhov card here, great Orzhov common. We have Imperious Oligarch. It's a Vigilance, that means it can attack without tapping, and it has Afterlife, which means you can see it right here on the screen. When this creature dies, a creature create a 1/1 black and white spirit creature token with flying. So this creature replaces itself with a flyer, and a lot of times it can trade up. We've already seen a couple examples, and we'll see some more. A lot of the 3 mana creatures in this format are 3/2s, and so having a 2 mana creature with 2 power means we can often trade up for their 3 mana creature, and then on top of that we get to leave a 1/1 behind. So this is a great card here, and look at that, Orzhov, it just keeps coming. So for 3 mana, it's an instant, destroy target creature or enchantment. This is the kind of removal we like to see. It's good costed, there's no restriction on it, we don't have to pay anything extra, and on top of all that, if our opponent does happen to play an enchantment, we have something to deal with that as well. Amazing flexibility. I'm liking Orzhov more and more I see it. Look at that. We have an Orzhov Locket. We have Basilica of Belhant. This is part of a what we call a cycle here. A cycle is when Wizards prints several similar type cards, but in different colors throughout the set. And each guild has one of these cards that cost 2 of each of the mana colors in the guild. So we already saw Sphinx of New Prov. This is the Azorius model, and you can see it costs 2 white and 2 blue. Here, Basilica costs 2 white and 2 black. It says, when Basilica Belhant enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and you gain 1 life. So we're taking a card from our opponent. Often that will just be a land or something that they couldn't play at the moment, but nonetheless it's a card, and it can block a creature on the ground. Has really good stats. 3/4 is a great blocker. It can be great on the offensive. Your opponent doesn't always have good creatures to stick in front of us. So usually Basilica of Belhant will at least be a 2-for-1, getting the card out of the hand and removing at least 1 creature on the battlefield, and on top of that we gain 3 life. So all around decent card. And look at this, another one. Let's see if this guy's any good. Knight of the Last Breath. He is a giant knight, as is very apparent by his artwork. For 3, we can sacrifice another non-token creature to create a white and black spirit creature with flying. He's a 4/4 for 7, which is quite a bit, but he does have Afterlife 3, which means he'll leave behind 3 1/1s. So essentially he is going to put 7 power and toughness on the board for 7 mana. So that is a fine price to pay. We'll look and see if there's any creatures that we can use to take advantage of his ability. Footlight Fiend. When Footlight Fiend dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Notice the mana symbol is one of the hybrid mana symbols. It means you can play either black or white for it, and excuse me, black or red for it. These cards are very useful because even if I'm not playing a deck that includes red, I can still play him for black. So he fits in. He's a very flexible card. Unfortunately, he's probably not going to make the deck for what we're going for, but it's good to know. Let's see what we have in Rakdos here. Cult Guild Mage. Target player discards a card. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. And then for red, Cult Guild Mage deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So not a bad little card. 2/2 for 2 is exactly the kind of stats you want to see. Being able to plink your opponent for 1 every turn can be useful towards the late game. I'm not liking him better than what we've seen in our Orzhov yet, but we might wind up splashing red depending on what else we see. Rakdos Rustabout. Whenever Rakdos Rustabout becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it is attacking. So nice aggressive creature. Again, the body is not too bad. A 3/2 for 3. Typically, I would prefer a 2/3 for 3, just because sealed tends to be a more slower, grindy format, and I like our creatures that can block pretty well. But it's a fine card. Still liking our Orzhov better. Rafter Demon. He is a 4 mana card. He's a 4/2. Whenever he enters the battlefield, if its spectacle cost was paid, each opponent discards a card. And Spectacle, as we mentioned before, you can see the effect right up there. You can cast this spell for its spectacle cost rather than its mana cost if an opponent lost life this turn. So if we do wind up splashing for red, Spectacle pairs really nicely with what the Orzhov is trying to do, because the Orzhov will tend to make a bunch of little 1/1s that can fly through the air unhindered and poke in for a little bit of damage, enabling that Spectacle. So that is an option here. We already saw several of our Gruul cards already. Point out a couple different ones. We have Collision and Colossus. This is a split card, meaning when you cast it, you'll get to choose between one or the other ability. 2 abilities are deal 6 damage to target creature with flying, or target creature gets +4/+2 in trample until the end of turn. So nice little flexible trick there, but certainly not better than what we've already seen in our Orzhov. We can do target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. When creatures fight off a card effect, it means they just both deal damage equal to their power to each other. So this is a nice card because it buffs your card and then allows you hopefully to take out one of your opponent's card. So this can be a decent piece of removal. Frenzied Oryx. This card is an amazing common, one of our like mythic uncommons here. He has Riot, which means when he enters the battlefield, you can either give him haste or you can give him a 1/1 counter. So this guy can be a 4/4 for 4 with trample, which are fantastic stats. And then for 6 mana, you can give him +3/+0 till the end of turn. So this guy can be a game ender unless your opponent deals with him rather quickly. Here we see the Gruul version of the cycle that I was mentioning before. Sunder Shaman says Sunder Shaman can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. He's a 4 mana card for 5/5 worth of stats, which is great stats. And then whenever Sunder Shaman deals damage to target player, destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. This guy is going to be a lot of fun in Commander, where there's great artifacts and enchantments to plink off. Probably not what we need here, other than just being a 5/5 for 4, which again is fantastic stats. I would be happy to play that. Applied Biomancy, another great combat trick here. For 2 mana, we can give target creature +1/+1. we can return target creature to its owner's hand. And the wonderful thing is we can do one or both of those things. So often we are setting our opponent back in tempo by returning our creature to their hand and letting one of our creatures trade, or maybe even just straight up take out one of our opponent's creatures that they weren't expecting. So wonderful Simic card. Wish I had more Simic to play with. Growth Spiral. Draw a card and put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. Talked about this a little bit yesterday. I think this will be great in some formats, but not in sealed. This is not a bad card in the beginning of the game, but you're going to feel horrible when you played out most of your hand and all you're trying to do is find those really useful cards here in your deck, and then all of a sudden you draw this card. You don't have extra lands to play. Even if you did, it's not going to help you get anywhere. So you're looking at this Growth Spiral that basically says pay 2 mana to draw the card that you wish you would have drawn this turn. So this can just set you back a little bit. Not a lot of love for Growth Spiral in this format. And then Aeromunculus, someone I do have a lot of love for, flying, 2/3 for 3 mana. So wonderful stats, nice evergreen ability there. But for 4 mana, we can adapt 1, and adapt just says if this creature doesn't have any 1/1 counters on it, we can put a 1/1 counter on it. So we can turn him into a 3/4 flyer, good body for blocking, good body for attacking. Like it all around, but not enough Simic to pull me in. So we are going to stick with our Orzhov for now, and potentially come back to splash some Azorius, or maybe some Rakdos. We had quite a bit of Rakdos, but let's see what we have in Orzhov. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. I spent a lot yesterday, but I'll try to pick out the ones that are rather interesting. Summary Judgment deals 3 damage to target tapped creature, or it has the Azorius ability for this set, Addendum. If we cast a spell during our main phase, it deals 5 damage to that creature instead. Wonderful little piece of removal here. We'll definitely include this. I was wondering why Senate Courier is showing up, but I guess it considers it to be a white card just because of the white ability. We probably won't be playing him. Let's see what else we have going on. Unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of white cards that are playable. 10th District Veteran is not great, but I'd be happy to play her if we needed to. Civic Stalwart actually could be pretty good for our deck if we wind up with several Afterlife cards. Civic Stalwart says, when Civic Stalwart enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 to the end of turn. If we're able to amass a nice little army of flyers, or the spirit tokens, being able to give all the creatures 1/1 is a nice way to push through some extra damage. So not upset about playing him. Thirsting Shade. 1 mana 1/1 with lifelink. Usually don't want to play these unless they have particularly strong abilities. A 1/1 is just not going to be able to affect the board. If you're lucky, you'll be able to attack with it once, and then all of a sudden your opponent has any creature with 2 toughness. Suddenly you can't attack into it. It doesn't make a good blocker. This one doesn't even have flying, so it can't block our opponent's spirit tokens. We can pay 3 mana to give it +1/+1 till the end of turn, but that's not exactly what we want to be spending our mana on. Rakdos Trumpeter is not bad. I wouldn't mind playing him, but we'll see what else we have. This I like to see. Noxious Grudian. He's a 3 mana 2/2, but he has Death Touch, which means he can always trade up for our opponent's creatures as long as they're not flying. So I think we will gladly play all 3 of those. Undercity's Embrace. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you gain 4 life. This will probably be good, especially with all the removal that we're already starting to put into our deck. We might be able to get some of our opponent's best creatures with this. It might be that they don't have any creatures left at all. It looks like we're turning into a deck that wouldn't mind trading off. I wish we had some big boy to finish off the game for us. Maybe we'll check in our colorless cards here in a minute to see if we have anything like that. Carrion Imp. When Carrion Imp enters the battlefield, you may exile a target creature card from a graveyard. If you do, gain 2 life. He is a 2/3 flyer for 4. Decent stats, not the best. We'll keep this guy as a maybe. Return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand for 4 mana, or we can Spectacle for 2 mana if we deal some damage. If we had more of an aggressive deck, a more creature-based deck, we might play this, but right now it's not looking that great. Vindictive Vampire. Whenever another creature you control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. 2/3 for 4 mana. This is kind of interesting with our Knight of the Last Breath. If we had a bunch of creatures to sacrifice, this one might be playable. I'm going to throw it in for now, but this one will be on our short list. Catacomb Crocodile, a 3/7 for 5. I like this guy as a guy who can just gum up the board. There's not a lot of attackers on the ground who can successfully attack through this, so happy to play that. Orzhov Racketeers. Whenever Orzhov Racketeers deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. He has Afterlife 2. So for 5 mana, he's going to leave behind 5 power and 4 toughness on the board. Not too bad. A little bit unsure about this guy, but we'll see how he winds up playing. Debtor's Transport. 6 mana, 5/3 with Afterlife 2. At this point, I think I want to have just about all the Afterlife creatures that I can get. It looks like our deck really wants to just trade down with our opponent, grind them out of cards, and then win with our flyers over the top. Let's see, we have 38 cards at the moment. Let's look into our colorless cards and see what we have there. Not much, just Gateway Plaza, Plaza of Harmony, and the cards we pointed out earlier. Glass of the Guild Pact and Tome of the Guild Pact. Worth seeing perhaps how many multicolored cards we have, how many creatures with Afterlife we have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, if there's any deck to play Glass of the Guild Pack in, I think this might be the one. So we're gonna give it a shot. We might cut it out later, but it's not too bad. I'm gonna look at my lands again to see what I had, that some guild gates that I had for splashing. Harmony, Plaza, Gateway Plaza, and Azorius. So the only thing that I think I would want to splash in this deck is maybe the Azorius Guildgate. So let's see if we just had anything in white-blue that might have pushed us over the top. Possibilities. So when you're looking for a splash card, you usually want a card that can a real bomb card, or some removal to fill out some holes in removal that you have. Thankfully, we have a lot of good removal. We just don't necessarily have a great finisher. Verity Circle is interesting. I'm almost tempted to throw that in. Here we go. Windstorm Drake. It's a flying card. It's a flying creature, 3/3 for 5. But other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. We are really counting on our spirit tokens to do some work in this deck. And so being able to give them all an additional +1/+0 makes them much more effective attackers in the air. We can block, we can trade better in the air. So Windstorm Drake is actually a card I would be quite happy to splash. With that in mind, we're going to throw in our Azorius Guildgate. And so I think we want Gateway Plaza. If we had more gates, we might play Plaza of Harmony. But I don't want to play it in replacement of a blue card because we could simply whiff be disappointed in that. So let's see, what do we have for our lands here? We have 5 white, 6 white, 7 white, 8 white. We have 8 black, and we have 1, 2, 3 blue. That is about exactly, well, I said 8, 9, 10 black. That's pretty much the distribution I want. We're definitely pretty black heavy in this deck, with just a little bit of white and our 1 blue card. I think I'm happy to see this. Okay. We're gonna finish up, finalize our deck, and let's see how we did.